All right, listener. So today, we're going deep on this document, The Doctrine of Fascism, by Benito Mussolini himself. Published in 1932, this thing lays out the ideology in pretty much its purest form. And look,
straight from the horse's mouth.
We're not endorsing it.
No, of course not.
But we want to understand it.
Right.
It's kind of like, learning how a virus works.
Right.
So you can, avoid getting infected.
Exactly. You got to understand these core tenets of fascism, to help us recognize, those echoes, however faint they may be in our modern world. It's like having an intellectual vaccine, against these dangerous ideas.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So getting into the text itself.
Yeah.
One of the things that really struck me was this glorification of war.
Oh, absolutely.
He calls it a crucible for strength.
Yeah.
He even says, I think the quote is, it sets the seal of nobility on the people who fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very romanticized and kind of unsettling view of violence.
It really is. And what's so fascinating is how this all ties into his concept of the state.
Oh, yeah.
For Mussolini, the state is everything.
Right.
Individuals exist only to serve it. Right. He writes, the fascist state is a synthesis and a unit inclusive of all values, interprets, develops, and potentates the whole life of a people.
Wow. It's a chilling vision, isn't it? This idea of total control.
Yeah.
And he, completely rejects pacifism.
Yeah.
Embraces conflict as a necessary part of life.
Right.
But it's not just about military might, though.
Right.
He also talks about this spiritual dimension to fascism.
Yes.
What did you make of that?
Well, it's actually a clever tactic when you think about it.
Okay.
He's trying to position fascism as both revolutionary and a continuation of tradition.
Oh, interesting.
He talks about a new style of Italian life while appealing to, this mythical Roman past.
Right.
He even uses religious language.
Really?
Talking about a moral law and a spiritual society that binds individuals together.
So he's trying to tap into people's, kind of deep-seated need for meaning and purpose.
Exactly.
But twisting it to fit his ideology.
Precisely. And then this, this manufactured spirituality is what he uses to justify his rejection of liberalism,
right,
democracy, and socialism.
Yeah.
He sees these ideologies as weak and decadent.
Oh, yeah.
Standing in the way of his vision for the state.
It's very strategic how he uses language.
Oh, he's a master of propaganda?
Like, for instance, he tries to claim that fascism is the purest form of democracy.
Yeah.
But then explicitly rejects the idea of individual rights, saying that the state is the only entity that truly matters.
Right.
So how does he reconcile these seemingly contradictory positions?
Well, it all comes down to his very specific and exclusionary definition of the people.
Right.
He's not talking about individual citizens having a say in government. He's invoking this mythical, ethnically molded nation that supposedly embodies the true will of the people.
I see.
And of course, he positions himself and the Fascist Party as the only ones who can properly, interpret and act on this will.
It's a dangerous game he's playing.
It is.
And one that's unfortunately resonated throughout history.
Sadly, yes.
And I think this raises a really important question for our listeners. Here in Deer Park, LaPorte, and Pasadena, can you spot similar rhetoric being used in today's political discourse?
That's the question, isn't it?
Are there echoes of these fascist ideas in the language used to demonize opponents or to glorify nationalism?
Absolutely.
Or promote, simplistic solutions to complex problems?
It's something to think about as we move forward, because understanding the past can really help us navigate the present.
Yeah.
Remember, fascism isn't just about dictators and violence.
Right.
It's an ideology, a way of thinking that can really seep into societies in subtle and insidious ways.
Yeah. And on that note, I think it's time to take a deeper look at some of the inherent contradictions within fascist thought. We'll pick up that discussion in part 2.
Welcome back. For all of his talk of strength and vitality, Mussolini's writing really reveals a deep-seated insecurity.
Yeah, you're right. He's constantly railing against these perceived enemies.
Yeah.
Liberals, socialists, Democrats, painting them as weak and decadent forces threatening the nation.
It's classic. It's a classic tactic used by authoritarian leaders throughout history.
Right.
Create an external threat to unify the masses and justify oppressive actions.
Yeah.
But in Mussolini's case, it's almost like he's projecting his own anxieties onto others.
It really does seem that way.
Yeah.
He also seems to contradict himself when talking about the people.
Right.
On the one hand, he claims to champion their will, but then he rejects democracy outright, stating that numbers as such cannot be the determining factor in human society.
So who are the people then? In Mussolini's vision,
Exactly.
it's not the individual citizens.
Right.
It's this carefully constructed image
Yeah.
of a homogenous nation, purified of anyone who doesn't fit his narrow definition of an ideal citizen.
And he tries to reconcile that by claiming that fascism is the purest form of democracy.
Right.
He even argues that the state creates the nation, not the other way around.
It's a twisted logic.
It really is.
But it highlights the danger of these charismatic leaders who claim to embody the will of the people
Oh, yeah?
while silencing any dissenting voices.
Of course.
And, this idea is closely tied to his vision of a corporatist economic system
Right.
where the state controls and directs the economy.
He rejects both laissez-faire capitalism and socialism.
Yeah, he's looking for this, this third way,
Right.
where private property exists, but it's entirely subservient to the needs of the state.
So essentially, it's state-controlled capitalism.
Exactly, often benefiting a select few.
Right. Those in power or closely aligned with the regime.
Precisely, and to maintain this system, propaganda becomes absolutely crucial.
Right.
And Mussolini understood this,
Oh, he was a master of it.
Yeah, he tightly controlled the media.
Right.
Used rallies and marches to stir up emotions,
Yeah.
and crafted this cult of personality around himself.
It's chilling how effectively he manipulated language.
Yeah.
Twisting facts, appealing to people's fears and prejudices.
Yeah.
He framed fascism as a spiritual movement,
Yeah.
a defense against decadence and weakness.
Yeah.
He even went so far as to claim it was the purest form of democracy.
All of this really underscores the importance of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Especially for us here in, Deer Park, LaPorte, and Pasadena.
For sure.
We need to be discerning consumers of information.
Absolutely.
Questioning everything, especially when it comes from sources with a vested interest in shaping our opinions.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of believing what we want to believe.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if it confirms our existing biases.
And that's how these dangerous ideologies take root.
Exactly. We need to be willing to challenge our own assumptions and consider viewpoints that might make us uncomfortable.
Absolutely. That's the foundation of a healthy democracy.
Now, there's one more aspect of Mussolini's ideology that I think warrants further discussion.
Oh, hey.
His glorification of imperialism.
Yep.
We'll unpack that when we return for the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
All right, so we're back, and we've talked about a lot, but there's one more piece of this puzzle I think we need to look at.
Yeah.
And that's Mussolini's perspective on imperialism.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme, throughout the document.
Oh, for sure.
He portrays expansion and conquest as these natural expressions of national vitality.
Right.
He even argues that a nation can be, quote, imperial, even without, conquering territory, suggesting, a kind of cultural or ideological dominance instead.
That's a dangerous idea, though, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it's been used to justify, aggression and exploitation on the world stage for centuries.
Right, right.
So how does this concept of imperialism fit into his overall vision for a fascist state?
Well, it's all tied to this emphasis on the fighting spirit.
Right. Yeah.
He believes that struggle and conflict are essential for national greatness, both internally and externally. This constant striving for dominance, this need to assert yourself over others.
Yeah.
It's presented as a core element of fascism.
And it's that romanticized view of violence, I think, that makes fascism so appealing to certain individuals.
Right.
It offers these simple solutions to complex problems, often scapegoating, external enemies or internal weaknesses to justify these oppressive actions.
And that's what makes it so dangerous.
Right.
Especially in today's world,
Especially today.
Yeah, this interconnected world, when leaders glorify conflict and they demonize those who disagree, it creates this climate of fear and intolerance that can spiral out of control so quickly.
So what can we do about it then?
Well,
how do we as individuals protect ourselves and our communities from falling prey to these dangerous ideologies?
I think it starts with awareness,
Okay.
We need to understand how these ideologies operate,
Right.
how they manipulate language.
Yeah.
how they exploit vulnerabilities.
Right.
We need to be critical thinkers, questioning the information that we're given.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes from sources that have a vested interest, shaping our opinions.
We need to check our facts.
Right.
Consider different perspectives.
Exactly.
Be wary of, emotionally charged language and simplistic solutions. We also need to be aware of our own biases.
Oh, absolutely.
And how they might make us vulnerable to manipulation.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
Of believing what we want to believe.
Right, especially if it confirms our existing prejudices.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's not enough to just be aware.
Right.
We have to be active in our communities.
Yeah.
Supporting organizations and initiatives that promote critical thinking and media literacy.
For sure.
We need to have those difficult conversations.
Right.
With friends and family members.
Yeah.
Who might be susceptible to these ideas.
Because as we've seen, from dissecting Mussolini's own words.
Yeah.
Fascism thrives when people are passive.
Right.
When they allow fear and division to take root. It preys on our insecurities.
Yeah.
Offers this false sense of security through strength and domination.
And that's a path we can't afford to go down.
Right.
Not here, not anywhere.
Yeah.
The best defense against these dangerous ideologies is an informed and engaged citizenry.
Absolutely.
A citizenry that can think for itself,
right,
discern truth from falsehood, and resist the allure of these simplistic solutions.
I think that's a great place to end it.
Yeah.
So let's continue this conversation.
Absolutely.
Let's challenge misinformation and hate speech wherever we see it.
Let's do it.
Let's support education and critical thinking. Let's never forget the lessons of the past. And work together to build a more just, equitable, and democratic future for our communities and the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And if you find value in our show, please support us at thinkandactlocally.com. Donate, the link is in the show notes.